Hilchos Terumos Perek Shmini, the laws of the Truma separation, chapter 8. We're talking about who can eat Truma. So Kohanim, of course, they're the primary people that get to eat Truma. And then we have their families. Primarily speaking, their wives. Their wives are going to be the big topic today. The wife of a Kohen or the daughter of a Kohen who marries a regular Jew. So if a regular Jewish woman marries a Kohen, now she's part of his family, she can eat Truma. If a daughter of a Kohen who grew up eating Truma as part of her father's household, if she marries a regular Jew, now she's disqualified from eating Truma. That's number one that we have to remember going into this chapter. Number two, we have to remember going into this chapter from yesterday, is that if a Jewish woman marries a Kohen, and they have a baby together, so the moment they have a baby together, even if the Kohen, the husband, passes away, ends the marriage, or whatever else happens, because the woman has a child through a Kohen, she can continue to eat Truma. Because of the son. But it could be a daughter also, as long as she has a descendant from a Kohen. Same thing the opposite. If the daughter of a Kohen married a Jewish guy, so if the marriage just ends, she goes back to her father's home and can continue to eat Truma. But if she has a son from the Israelite man, so now she's disqualified forever. This concept of being allowed to eat Truma by virtue of marriage to a Kohen or being disqualified from eating Truma because of marriage to an Israelite is the main two terms of this chapter. It's called Ma'achil and Posel. Ma'achil means qualification or entitlement to eat Truma. Posel means disqualification to eat Truma. And basically the chapter today is all going to be about certain scenarios, people or marriages that either just disqualify from eating Truma but don't qualify you, or they do neither. They don't qualify, they don't disqualify. That's the ones we're focused on today. Says the Rambam Halacha Aleph, Ha'ubar, a fetus, unborn child, the Hayavam, and a person who's waiting in the wings to perform levirate marriage, the brother of the deceased husband, the Ha'edosin, and the first stage of marriage, just giving a ring, the Hacheresh, and a deaf mute, Uben Tesha Shanim v'yem echad, and a boy who's 9 years old and 1 day, Poislin v'loy ma'achilin. In these 5 scenarios, if there's a marriage that's created, or the fetus is present but not born, they can disqualify the daughter of a Kohen from eating Truma, but they cannot qualify a regular Jewish woman to eat Truma. What does that mean? Let's look at the following cases. The Rambam goes one by one. Ha'ubar ketzad. First, let's look at a fetus. Bas Yisrael ha'me'uberes mikoyin. You have a Jewish woman who is pregnant by a Kohen, either out of marriage, or maybe they were married, but now the Kohen died. So all you have left is a Jewish woman, a Yisrael woman, who's pregnant with the Kohen's child. So we said before that while she's married to the Kohen, of course she can eat Truma. What if this Kohen dies? So if she had a child, she could for sure eat Truma. What if she's holding an unborn child? So the unborn child, it doesn't qualify. Lo teichal b'shvila ubar. She cannot eat Truma just because she's carrying the fetus. Once the fetus will be born, absolutely. But as long as the fetus is not born yet, she cannot eat Truma. In the opposite scenario, uvas kohen hamu'uberes mi Yisrael. What if you have a daughter of a Kohen? That means she grew up eating Truma all her life. Now she became pregnant by a regular Jewish person. So again, same scenario. If they're married, of course she cannot eat Truma. What if they're not married? Or what if the guy died? Asura lechal mipnei ubar. Now the fetus is powerful. It disqualifies her. So it's not powerful enough to qualify her in this case, but it is powerful enough to disqualify her from eating Truma in this case. Shenemar, because it says in the verse, which talks about the daughter of a Kohen, it says, V'shava el beis avia kin ureha. The condition for a daughter of a Kohen to be able to go back and eat Truma is if she can go back to her father's home like she was in her youth. Torah uses the word kin ureha, prat li me'uberes. That excludes a woman who's pregnant. She's not coming back like she was in her youth. She's now pregnant. And therefore, the pregnancy disqualifies her from eating Truma. Halacha Gimel, even though a fetus has a power, in some cases, to disqualify, Bas Kohen Sheba Leha Yisrael, if all we know is that the daughter of a Kohen had a relation with a regular Jew, that's all we know. Ein Cheshesh in Shema Nisabra. We don't have to worry, we don't have to suspect that she's pregnant. we can assume she's not pregnant. Ela toiveles vayicheles la'erev, she goes to the mikveh and can eat truma that night. Hoysa nesua liYisrael, not only if she had a relationship, even if she was married, actually married to a regular Jew, umeis baila, and the husband dies, same thing. We don't have to worry at the moment of death that she's pregnant. Toiveles vayicheles betruma la'erev adar ba'im yom. The first 40 days after the death, she can go to the mikveh and eat truma in the evening like a regular person. Why 40 days? Because 40 days, even if she is pregnant, the first 40 days of conception, we're going to see in a minute, the fetus is not considered to be even an embryo, according to halacha. So even if she were pregnant, we're not worried yet. If after 40 days, the fetus begins to show, so it's revealed retroactively that she was indeed pregnant, so it's a risk. In that case, indeed, she'd be ruined retroactively for 40 days. Whatever truma she ate in the last 40 days would be considered like a person who eats truma inadvertently, where you have to make restoration, you have to pay up, plus a fifth. The reason why she has leeway of 40 days is because the first 40 days, the fetus is not considered to be a fetus. According to halacha, it's only considered to be literally water. Halacha dalet. Bas Yisrael shemisis lekayin. Let's consider another case. Besides for the wife. Okay, you have a daughter of a Jew, a regular Jewish woman, married to a Kohen. Umeis is an ex here because he died. The Kohen died. V'hinicha me'uberes. And he leaves her pregnant. So we already said the law that applies to her. In the case where she's pregnant, it's not yet enough to be qualified to eat truma. The question is, we know there's about to be a Kohen born. This pregnancy is going to come to full term, God willing. There's going to be a baby. Can the slaves of the Kohen who passed away, can they eat truma? Because yesterday we learned, the other day also, that not only family but also slaves can eat truma. So in this scenario, even if the fetus is not powerful enough to have the wife eat truma, is it powerful enough to have the slaves eat truma? Says the Rambam, no. Lo yoichlu avada b'truma b'shvila ubar. The slaves cannot eat truma on account of the fetus. Shehayalud hu shemachil, she'ena yalud ena machil. Only a born Kohen, or a born fetus in this case, can qualify the slaves to eat truma, not an unborn fetus. Lefichach, therefore, the opposite scenario can emerge. Let's just add onto the screen over here. Imagine there was two boys. Or you know what? Let's actually use this screen to bring it out better. You have a Kohen who was married to a regular Jewish woman. They had 2 kids together. These kids are both Kohanim. Okay? Then he got married to this woman. He wasn't supposed to marry her. She's a divorcee from a different marriage. And she's pregnant by the Kohen, which means that this fetus here is what we call a chalal. He's going to be a disqualified Kohen. So watch what happens now. There are other Kohanim alive. They are also inheriting their father. If the Kohen dies, they go in his place. The slaves of the Kohen, based on them, would be able to eat truma. What about this fetus? Says the Rambam, Lefichach im haya ha'ubar chalal, if the fetus was a chalal, was about to be born in a disqualified way, einei paisa la'avadim. The same way he couldn't entitle them to eat truma in the previous case, he doesn't disqualify them from eating truma now because of the other kids that are alive. Ela oichlin biglal echav akshedim, they can keep eating truma on account of the brothers that are kosher, ad sheyivaled zeh chalal, till the chalal is born. Once the chalal is born, fascinatingly, they're going to be unable to eat truma anymore. At that point, the slaves are going to be forbidden to eat. Why? Because they're partially owned by the chalal, by a disqualified Kohen who cannot qualify you to eat truma. Until, the commentaries say, till these brothers will divide the estate. Once the brothers divide the estate, whichever slaves will be then owned by these Kohanim will continue, of course, to be able to eat truma. Halacha hey, so that covers the first category. Second category, hayavam keitzad. What does it mean that a yavam, a person waiting in the wings for Yibum, what does it mean that he disqualifies the daughter of a Kohen, but he can't qualify a regular Jewish woman? Says the Rambam the following scenario. Bas Yisrael hazkuka liyavam Kohen. Regular Jewish woman over here, she was married to a Kohen, the Kohen died, and now she's waiting in the wings for this guy, a Yavam, the potential levirate marriage guy who's also a Kohen. So you could say, hey, she's about to get married to a Kohen. Maybe she can eat truma. No. Loy toicha. At this point, she cannot eat truma. This Kohen, the Yavam, is not powerful enough, einay machil, he's not powerful enough to qualify this woman. Shenemar, because the Torah says, v'choyin ki yikna nefesh. When does a Kohen allow his wife to eat truma? When he acquires the soul. That's the act of acquisition, the act of marriage. In this scenario, the Kohen still hasn't yet acquired her. On the other hand, says the Rambam, ubas kohen as kukali Yisrael, if it was the opposite scenario, where the woman was a Kohen, she was the daughter of a Kohen, married to a regular Jew. While they were married, of course, she cannot eat truma. Then he dies. So you'd say, okay, he's dead. Now she's no longer married. Let her go back to her father. No. Says the Rambam, asura mipnei yavama. As long as she's tied down to this Jew who's going to eventually do yibum to her, she's forbidden to now eat truma. She is considered married. So in other words, it works on both ends to stringency. Exactly. Shenemar, because it says, V'shava el beis aviha kin ura. Same thing. We're doing it from a verse. She has to, the only time a Kohen's daughter going back to her father's house can eat truma is if she goes back to her father's house like she was in her youth. Prat l'shemeres yavam. This excludes a woman waiting in the wings for yibum. She doesn't fulfill this first part of the verse. She's not returning to her father's house. She's still attached to this guy, and therefore she cannot eat truma. Halacha vav yavam kohen shabal yivimtoi ba'oines oy bishgaga. Let's go back to the case, the first case, where the Kohen was the guy who was supposed to do the yibum, and he had a relationship with this woman against his will or inadvertently. Yes, he was forced into it. He didn't do the proper yibum. He was forced, or by mistake, he didn't realize what he was doing. But he ended up having a relationship and thereby consummating the yibum. Or he began the act of intercourse but didn't complete it. In halacha, beginning means the insertion of the beginning of the organ, and the completion is the entire organ. Even though in all these cases, relative to the laws of yibum, what he did was enough to acquire her, it's not enough to have her eat truma. She's not considered his full wife yet. Ad sheyival be'ila gemura beratzin, until two conditions are met: a complete act of relations, willfully. Says the Rambam, when do we say this limitation? If her previous marriage, this one over here, this guy who died right after giving her the ring, before he had a chance to fully marry her. But if she became a widow from a full marriage, since, of course, if the brothers are Kohen, that means the husband was a Kohen. So since she was already eating truma from the husband Kohen, even a minimal type of relationship consummated by this Kohen already allows her to continue to eat truma. So that's stage 2, how the Yavam also doesn't qualify but does disqualify. Halacha zayin ha'erusin ketzad, the third category. What does it mean that giving a ring, simply starting off a marriage, what does it mean that it will disqualify the daughter of a Kohen, but it won't qualify a Jewish woman? So we have the scenario. Bas Kohen shenisarsa Yisrael. When the daughter of a Kohen gets engaged, and by Torah law we mean he gave her a ring, he literally makes her, it's the beginning of a marriage. Asura lechel. You would think that maybe she's just not fully married yet. Maybe she can still eat truma for her father's house. Nope. At this point she's forbidden. Shahari yesh le'ba kinyan, because the moment you give her a ring, there's some element of an acquisition which is made. But in the opposite scenario, if it was a Jewish girl who got engaged, really betrothed to a Kohen, here she cannot eat yet, not fully married, till she goes to the chuppah. As we explained in the other chapter, we're worried that during the time period between the engagement and the actual marriage, she'll feed the truma to people who cannot eat it, her relatives. A Jewish guy tells the daughter of a Kohen, here's a ring. I want you to be consecrated to me only after 30 days. So even though we just said that if a Yisrael does erusin to a Kohen's daughter, it disqualifies her, not in this scenario. Since he only said the consecration is going to go into effect after 30 days, she can keep on eating truma for those 30 days. She hasn't yet been betrothed. But if he tells her, he adds that word in, you're going to be consecrated to me from now, after 30 days, then she's forbidden to eat right away. The same law applies to all similar stipulations. What does it mean, the fourth category, deaf mutes? What does it mean that a deaf mute disqualifies the daughter of a Kohen, but doesn't qualify the daughter of a regular Jew? If the daughter of a Kohen gets married to a deaf mute regular Jew, that marriage is not powerful enough. It is powerful enough, that marriage is considered powerful enough that it disqualifies her from eating truma. Because a deaf mute, by rabbinic law at least, acquires his wife, because they decree that he should have some kind of a marriage. On the other hand, if it was a regular Jewish girl who got married to a deaf mute Kohen, the marriage is not powerful enough, she cannot eat truma on account of him, because biblically speaking, the deaf mute Kohen doesn't acquire her, because he doesn't have the fit mental capacity to begin a marriage. What if a Kohen who is a regular Kohen, mentally stable, gives the ring to this Jewish girl? He doesn't have a chance to consummate the marriage, and he becomes deaf mute. Big accident, whatever it is. So at the point of the Erusin, he was a good guy. At the point of the marriage, he's a cherish. So, too bad. We look at the marriage, and since the marriage is not powerful enough, biblically, she cannot eat truma. Mace, what if the Kohen died? So we're going to look at this case again. We're going to imagine this red guy is the Kohen who was initially stable and then became unstable and died. Then she falls to this Kohen, the brother, who's also a deaf mute, and he does yibum, she cannot eat truma. Why? Because since she was never able to eat truma from the first husband, neither can she from the second husband. But if the first Kohen actually married her in a stable condition, and then he lost his power to hear and speak, deaf mute, so since she began the marriage able to eat, she can continue to eat. Not only that, if this Kohen dies and she falls before the other brother who's also a deaf mute and he marries her, she can continue to eat since she was eating anyway in the beginning. Interesting point. Even though if a Jewish woman marries a Kohen who's deaf mute, that Kohen is not powerful enough to make her eat truma. If they have a kid together, that kid is powerful enough. The kid, because he's the son of a Kohen, is powerful enough to have his mother eat truma on his account. And the final category that we're learning about today is Yud Aleph. Ben Tesha Shanim V'Yem Echad Ketzad. What does it mean that a 9-year-old can disqualify a Kohen's daughter, but not qualify a regular Jewish girl? Misha Nivala La'asrla. If a woman had relations with a man who is forbidden to marry her, let's say a mamzer, V'hu Ben Tesha Shanim V'Yem Echad, even if he is only 9 years old, since halachically speaking, his relationship has significance. At this point, she becomes disqualified from the kahuna, can no longer eat truma, because she becomes a zayna, a woman who engaged in a forbidden relationship, or a halala, as we explained. Even if this 9-year-old boy was impotent, doesn't make a difference. On the flip side, if a Jewish girl marries a Kohen who is 9 years old, even though his relationship has halachic significance, the Kohen is not powerful enough to have her eat truma, because he won't acquire her until he reaches majority. What if we're in doubt whether he reached 9 years yet? So we don't know. Or she gets married in a regular case to a Kohen who is 13 years old. That's how the commentaries explain it. We're not talking about a case where the Kohen girl marries a Jewish guy. This last case, talking about a Jewish girl who marries a Kohen. And we're in doubt whether he manifested the pubic hairs that are the physical signs of maturity. Out of doubt, we're stringent, and we say she cannot eat truma. All of these 5 categories. When we talk about not being qualified to eat truma, the same way they're not powerful enough to qualify the woman to eat truma that's biblical, they're also not powerful enough to qualify her to eat truma that's rabbinic. Because we make a decree. If we're going to allow them to eat truma that's rabbinic, maybe they're going to come to eat truma that's biblical. The following scenarios, marriages, non-marriages, don't do anything. They don't disqualify a regular Jewish girl, and they also don't disqualify a Kohen, and they also don't qualify a regular Jewish girl. Ha'enis, a rapist. Okay, if a Kohen would rape a Jewish girl, so doesn't qualify her to eat truma. If a Jew would rape a Kohen's daughter, it doesn't disqualify her. Same thing b'hamefata, a seducer. The hashoita shenasa isha, or if a mentally unstable Kohen or a regular Jew marries a woman. In these cases, their marriage or their act means nothing. Unless they were forbidden to begin with, inherently forbidden to each other, in which case the relationship will disqualify them on that account. Because they became thereby a zayna or a halala, as we explained. You have a Kohen who either raped or seduced a girl, or he was unstable and he married a woman. So exactly the same three cases, who typically don't do anything. They don't qualify their wives or their girl. But as a result of this relationship, the girl gives birth. So as a result of the rape, she gave birth, or the mentally unstable person got her pregnant. So like in the other scenarios, once you have a child, that's a different story. Now there's a child. The fact of the matter is, there's a child on this walking this earth from the Kohen. So it's powerful enough to have her eat truma. Even though you can say maybe there's a doubt. There was no real consecration. Maybe the pregnancy is from someone else. The bottom line is the baby is going to be presumed to come from this Kohen, even though it was out of wedlock. That's only provided that there's no other rumors about anybody else. The rumors are only about this Kohen. Same thing if there's a daughter of a Kohen, where the mentally unstable Jew married her, or the regular Jew raped her, or seduced her, in which case, again, it's not powerful enough to disqualify her. But Vinis Abra, if she becomes pregnant, once there's a pregnancy, now she cannot eat truma on account of the pregnancy. If the fetus was cut up, in other words, it was aborted, then she can go back to eating truma like her father's house. This takes us back to the laws of the sota. Actually, nowadays we're in... Huh? Oh, so this goes back to sota. Sota is actually, now we're in the days of Sfirat HaOmer. Many Jews study the tractate of sota in the Talmud every day. There's 49 pages, 49 days of Sfirat HaOmer. So what is a sota? A sota is a woman who is suspected of committing adultery. The way it goes is like this. The husband has to do kinoi. He first warns his wife. He says, hey, I see you hanging out. Don't go into seclusion with that man. Then, two witnesses have to actually say stira. They have to witness the seclusion. If two witnesses watched her be warned, and two witnesses watched her go into seclusion, even though we don't know what happened in that seclusion, now she's a saita. Now she's a suspected adulteress, and she has to go to the Beis HaMikdash and take what's called the bitter waters, the whole process. You drink the waters. Says the Rambam, if there's a married woman who has witnesses against her, that she was warned against seclusion, and that she went into seclusion, in this moment, she's forbidden now to eat truma. If she was married to a Kohen, she's forbidden to eat truma till she proves herself, till she drinks the waters. She's fake zayna, because the moment she has these witnesses, she's in doubt whether she's a zayna. If the husband dies before he has the chance to give her to drink, or she was from that list of women that we saw when we learned the laws of the Saita, that may not drink the bitter waters for whatever reason, their circumstance of their marriage, doesn't allow for the waters, and it also doesn't allow them to take their ksuba payout as they leave the marriage. So since we can never figure out whether she actually committed adultery or not, so we have to assume stringently that she can never eat truma again. And in general, any time, forget the warning or the seclusion, anytime the wife of a Kohen shows up and says, I became defiled, I had a relationship out of my marriage, by her own declaration, she's forbidden to eat truma, which is a big novelty, because if you remember, way back in the laws of marriage, the Rambam says that if the wife of a Kohen shows up in court and says, I committed adultery, we actually don't believe her. Because we assume that she just hates her husband and wants to get out of the marriage, so she's saying this line. However, while we don't believe her for marriage, we do believe her for truma. In other words, you came to court, you said you committed adultery, okay, no benefits. No benefits. You'll stay in the marriage, and you can't eat truma. Halacha Tezayin, last halacha for today. Ktana bas Yisrael, shenisis lekoyin, shalei midas aviyah. A minor Jewish girl who gets married to a Kohen without her father's consent, bein bifnei aviyah, bein shalei b'fanav, whether in his presence or in his absence, afal pisha kidsha aviyah. Even if the father hands her off for kiddushin, so you would think like, what do you mean it's not with his consent? He literally handed her off. Doesn't matter. Eino echelas b'truma. She cannot eat truma even though she's married to a Kohen. She'im micha te'as azara lemafreya. Because we have to always worry, perhaps the father will protest at one point in time in this marriage, at which point retroactively it will be nullified. And you can't eat truma if you're not married to a Kohen. You're going to ask me, the guy's being quiet. The fact that the father is watching the marriage happen and being quiet, when a man is quiet, doesn't always mean he agrees with what's happening. It could be he's actually upset, he's angry. Because she got married without his consent. But he's waiting until he calms down and then he'll protest. So you have to worry in this case that maybe the marriage is going to be uprooted retroactively and therefore she cannot eat the truma.